Welcome to the midweek message from First Grapevine, a United Methodist church. We're glad you've joined us. Please take a moment and let us know you are watching by registering on our church website or mobile app. We hope this encouraging word will be a blessing for the middle of your week.
Welcome to our midweek message. We've got a very special treat for you. We're having a conversation with our very own Reverend Travis Franklin. We are so glad to have you back here with us. And this is the first official thing you are doing with us that goes out on the internet. Inside baseball, we've been here all day. But this will be, in terms of time, that'll be the first time they'll get to see you. So welcome.
Thank you, Grant. It's good to be back. It's been a while. Had a little detour on January the 4th, and it's been an interesting journey.
Well, how are you feeling?
Feeling great. I do have to admit that after a traumatic event, I'm not sure I realized physically how much of a toll it takes on you. Mm-hmm. And so about 3 weeks ago, I started to try to create a workout routine. I've been doing some physical therapy, but was going to add to that. And man, I just was really surprised.
Yeah,
I've never been that weak in terms of trying to start back into something that required a little bit of stamina and a little bit of strength. And so, it was humbling.
Well, a big part of it is just being down that long. Yeah. Even if you didn't have a health issue, just lying down for that long. Yeah.
It's been quite a journey.
But you look great.
Thank you.
You look decades younger than when you went in. But why did you shave? I got to ask that. Why'd you shave?
That's an interesting question. The reason I had that facial hair was because of Erin. Originally, we'd come back off a trip, and I had whiskers, and I was putting her down, and she was playing with my whiskers, and I said, "What?" She said, "What are those?" And I said, "Well, those are Daddy's whiskers." And so she said, "I like your whiskers." So I said, "Well, I'll just grow." So that's when I grew the beard, and then cut it down to the goatee. So the whole reason for having all of that was her, and so I don't know, maybe symbolic for me. Really, that something transformative had happened in my life. I'm a big believer in symbols. And so probably more than anything, just every time I look at myself in the mirror, I was reminded that something had happened to me that's had a profound effect on me and changed me in a lot of ways. And so I guess the lack of the facial hair are just symbolic of that for me.
Well, can we talk about that? Can we delve into that a little bit?
Well, we can to some degree. I will confess straight out of the gate. It's as deeply personal as an event has ever affected me in my life, including the death of my 25-year-old daughter, Brittany. I didn't think that anything would have taken me as deep soulfully as the loss of my daughter. And that was a horrendous event and a horrendous time in my life, and certainly a wilderness time. It's been a hard time, and yet it's been a powerful, powerful experience. There are just some things that I'm experiencing, seeing now that before I just didn't have the capability of seeing or experiencing. I'm at the point now where I give God thanks for a stroke. And like I said, I'm not really sure where all this leads next for me. I'm still trying to figure that part out and try to keep myself out of the way of whatever God is doing with all of that. So be patient with me.
Well, you come back to a very different landscape.
Oh, man.
Than when you left, which I can only imagine that makes it more challenging.
Very much.
Although I can't remember if I said this to you the other day, but somebody mentioned that, like what an interesting time to come back. And the analogy I used, I said, actually, it's kind of a good time to come back because it's like in a car race. Pardon my car stuff coming out.
Well, I'd have been disappointed had it been anything else.
It's like in a car race, and we're all under full course caution here. And so you come out of the pits and you haven't lost ground because we're still going real slow. We're barely moving around the track here. But no, what an interesting time to come back. What a strange time to ease back into ministry, because last time you were in this room would have been filled with people.
Yeah. So the landscape has changed, definitely.
But that gives you a fresh perspective, I think, because you've been living into the pandemic as you're living with your own health situation. What do you think about church now? Like, what is the call of church in the world today, and how has it changed from January 4th?
Mm-hmm. I and the church both, I think, have made this a lot about beliefs, and I get that, and I'm sure God gets it, because we all feel like we've got to believe things, but what's gotten lost in our preoccupation with believing the right things is we've forgotten that it's about a relationship. It's about a God who loves us, that holds nothing back. The hound of heaven never stops looking, never stops giving, never stops sacrificing, regardless of whether we respond or not. It's all unconditional. And that's on God's side of the covenant relationship of love. I think it's hard to give it over, the life of the church over to God, because he scares us to death, and because he pushes us and nudges us in loving and being the love. And Jesus certainly modeled that. And we don't want, nobody wants to get close to Jesus Christ. I mean, you want to get stirred up and challenged and pushed and nudged to places you don't want to go, to do things you don't want to do. Then you read those Gospels and read them in a relationship understanding of pure love. And when you start doing that, and you start looking at your own life in terms of emulating that, that's difficult. And I think the church, I'm talking about the big C here, has found it easier to just, create belief systems around what we're comfortable with, and to do things that aren't nearly as risky. I will say that if there's a church out there that is an exception to that rule, I think this church is. I think this church has been willing to go and do hard things and be with people. And so I'm very proud of our church. I'm very proud to pastor this congregation because of that. But even for us, and in this time, back to the original question, oh yeah, I think it's a new day, and I think this is an opportunity for us to, in some ways, retool and make that mission statement about love, one that applies to everybody, everywhere. And certainly, now that our world has been expanded and our reach has been expanded, because there are a lot of people out there that have been hurt by the church. And for good reason. I think the church, in its lack of trust of God, has had a lot of collateral damage too, because of the kind of gospel message that it's sought to proclaim that's been very limited. And you got to do 1, 2, 3 and be like us before you get in. We've made it about club and membership. And it's about discipleship, and it's about relationship. It's about deep, abiding love that risks everything for anybody, anywhere.
Yeah, this upcoming scripture, this coming Sunday, is Jesus with the woman at the well, which takes place in Samaria, which is a place where Jewish people just didn't go. And you were saying you get close to Jesus, you're going to go places you don't want to go. We see the disciples already having to do that, and this is at the front end of the Gospel of John. So very early on in their time together, they're already going places they don't want to go. And then if you read the book of Acts and then more about the tradition of the early church, these little people who are fishermen and work normal jobs and in their backwoods home end up traveling the world, going to all kinds of places because they're following Jesus and going on a difficult journey and an amazing adventure all at once.
Mm-hmm. It's a powerful story.
So what's something that you read while you're away that you would recommend? Do you have a book that, you picked up that...
God was very present in this time away. God just kept leading me in ways that I would run across a book and I'd say, well, I haven't seen that book before there. What's that doing there? So I'd get it, and it'd be exactly the book that I needed. To give you an example, I was in my library right after the event happened, and I was looking for something for one of our members that I was going to let them use the book. And I ran across this other book by a guy named David Benner. And I'd read David Benner before, and I really liked David Benner, and I'd seen this book, and I said, I bought that book to read, and I never read it. So I pull it off the shelf. Theologically, it just is exactly what God was saying to me in the theological language that just broke apart my very limited theological understanding of God's love. And he got me to start asking some questions that, so that's an example of just one. But David Benner's book on spirituality, anything that he writes, I would recommend. I ran across a good Episcopalian named Sue Monk. I'd never read her, and I read my devotionals on my digital. And so my devotionals come up on the top, so I click on them, and they'll have suggested reading. This woman has never been in my suggested reading. And so there she was. And I clicked on it, a story about her spiritual awakening in midlife. I went, well, that's a book I'm going to. And I mean, it's just been another one of those books. Brene Brown, book on, I never read anything by her, even though she's very popular. A book on wilderness wandering. Oh my gosh, it's just powerful. And it's describing everything that's going on in me. So yeah, there have been a lot of those kinds of moments and those kinds of resources. So yeah, any of those folks I would highly recommend you read. Yeah. They've been very helpful to me and good guides in my own desert wanderings.
So it looks like, as we're recording this week, we're going to still be socially distant for a little while longer. Mm-hmm. We're starting to see some businesses start to open up. I know that we're already working on what our plan is going to be, but it's still going to be a little while.
It is.
Do you have any recommendations for people on just how to cope with that? How do you deal with what we're living through?
Well, I can only speak for myself, but the one thing that I found for me is that I have some more time on my hands. And so the place that I want to go in that is I want to grow in that love of God. And so that's one of the reasons I've been reading so much. And there are other ways to do that. I mean, you've got lots of resources out there online whereby you can, pick up your Bible, pick a book. Read it in a way you haven't had time to before. Conversations with family. I mean, Laura and I and Aaron have just, we've done family things together. I mean, we went out yesterday and bought Aaron her new bike. And so she's now on her bike and we're riding as a family, And again, getting to know our neighbors and having conversation with people that live in our neighborhood. And so those are the kinds of things that have been amazing. And we do some projects there at the house. We're redoing our fence and some things but it's things we're doing together. Yeah. And that's made all the difference in our life together. We all miss being with our friends, our churches, our communities, certainly. But, it's in the way only God can do in the midst of wilderness and crisis. There are some things that are happening that are amazing, transformative. And so those are the kinds of things that we want to be a part of, to lean in to trusting God more than typically we have time or effort to do in these lives that we've created before the pandemic. And my one word of advice would be, for goodness sakes, let's don't go back to those as they were, even as good as some of us might think they were. An event like this changes everything. It just does. It changes perspective. And your hope is that once perspective and how we see is changed, that it leads to a different kind of behavior that's more in line with what you learned from the event that created the perspective. And so that's what, I'm hoping happens for all of us. And whatever we need to do to put in place the follow-up to those kinds of changes is the kind of work we probably all need to be doing to some degree. So it's not a time for sure to, coast.
Yeah.
Rest is one thing, but I think we've been given some opportunities with God to take it a little deeper.
Well, we're nearing the end of our time together. Do you have anything else you want to add to the people watching this video?
Well, I do want to make one comment about, when we're going to get back together. I've been looking at all of the information, and there's just a ton of it out there. And we've got a group that's meeting in our church that's going to be having conversation about that. We have a meeting actually this week about all that. But the one thing I want to remind us about is that our mission statement is about experiencing and sharing God's love. And so God's love will be the defining piece about how we do that and when we do that. Because it's about a relationship. And we want to be incredibly faithful to what and how God needs to provide for people, what only God can provide through the church, but in a way that does not put people at risk. And so that will be what guides us. And there'll be, a lot of heads and hearts around that table, and it won't be my decision. It'll be a group decision, but that will be what will drive it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up our conversation now. Check back in this Sunday when we have our worship. You'll be able to find that on our website, on social media, and sign up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you can be the first to see whenever any new content goes live. You got any questions or comments? Shoot us an email. Give us a call. Our phones are ringing even though we are far away. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I got one more item.
All right.
Finish up and I'll let me know.
No, that's contact us, subscribe. Let us know.
Okay. One last thing I want to say before we go is I want to say a personal word to Reverend Grant Palma. When I went down, he got thrown into the deep end of the pool, and as if that wasn't enough, he became the lead pastor, and then the pandemic. And so I want to say to you, my friend, I am grateful to be working with you, and I will never be able to repay you for the leadership that you have provided this congregation in my time away, and at a critical time in this congregation's life when the church had to do its work differently. So thank you, Brother Paul.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor. It's been this church is an incredible group of people.
Amen to
who have risen to the occasion. If you were looking for a way you can plug in, this church has been extra vigilant during this time to keep small groups going, keep mission going. It's always an honor to get to serve here, but especially when things are a little bit harder, because it's incredible to see how God moves in this world and moves in a community like ours. So,
amen, Brother Grant.
So thank you. We are so glad to have you back.
Good to be back.
Thank you for letting me corner you here in the midweek message and letting people hear from you. I just thought that we need to hear what's going on, a little bit more than just a 30-second clip. We need to sit down and chat with you and see how you're doing. Well, we're glad you're here. Glad you look so great.
Thanks.
And excited to see where we're going to go during this interesting and different time. And we can't wait until we get to do this with actual
Amen
more than just the one smiling face in the room.
You guys warned me about this, but there's no way you can describe it until you do it without the people. It is hard.
Well, this coming Sunday, we're talking about presence, about God's presence and our commitment to be present with God and with one another. And this pandemic has been a reminder of how powerful and important it is to just be present with people. Because I always look forward to coming up here for worship, for being around other people. But I tell you, I've been desperate for these days when we come and record and we escort some people in one side and the others out the other, so we're never too many in a room at one time. As odd and awkward as that is, it's still the highlight of my week. And I can't wait till we get to see all of you, all of your smiling faces. But while I've got just one other thing I wanted to say that has been a positive note about all of this is that some of them are attending worship with us, are talking to us, and they don't live in our zip code. They live elsewhere. And I know that someday we'll have a new normal where we can have worship with people in the room, but I think we just have to redefine what we think is our community in terms of, look, if you're going to keep watching at home, whether you live down the street and you're just trying to be extra safe, or you live in another state or around the world, look, you're still a part of First Grapevine.
Amen.
There's still a church home here for you. We're going to do a better job on our end of making sure that type of community connection is available. But I encourage you, if you're out there and you're watching and you feel connected with us and at home here, and we haven't heard from you yet, shoot us an email. Let us know you're out there. We want to welcome you to our church. So that's all for now. Like I said, we'll see all of you soon. Welcome back to Travis, and we hope you have a great day.